You've just checked in at the airport. You're en route to your next event. Through the massive windows, you observe that it's raining outside, and you take in the energizing bustle all around you. There's the intricate dance of parking aeroplanes and boarding travelers on the runways and walkways below, the noise of concession stands and the blare of intercom announcements. But you feel a little removed from all that. You find yourself in a moment's peace with time to kill. To the bookstore. There's something delightful about the calm and quiet of this place, with its aroma of coffee and the rows upon rows of quiescent authorial voices whispering their promises and premises to you from shelf upon shelf. And there, front and center in the section you find most interesting, is your book, with your name on the cover. It looks so right there, so real, so perfectly plausible. It's as if passers-by are blissfully unaware of the agony and doubt that went into its genesis. Now it has a publisher's logo, a striking and appropriate cover design, a pithy quote beneath the title, and an endorsement from a famous name. When you peel back the front cover, on the crisp white page, there's a dedication and a clever quote. And as you stand back, cradling your suit jacket in the crook of your arm and smiling quietly to yourself at the sight of this 300-page victory, something terrific happens. A browser walks past, picks it up, looks over the back cover, then walks off to the counter to buy it, adding the content of your universe of words and ideas to their own stash for later private inspection. Short of wild tropical honeymoons and the birth of new babies, which may be thought of as cause and effect, few things are as satisfying as publishing a book. And they also constitute one of the strongest arguments for your status as an expert. Regardless of whether it's a staggering academic treatise on the order of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, or a simpler little offering based on real-life observations, or even just a clever little analogy, who moved my cheese, you radically increase the level of your positioning when you become commercially published. It gives you credibility, it results in publicity, and it transforms you into a sort of insta-authority in your field. Self-publishing is really not as effective. It does not carry the same clout or credibility entailed in the process of vetting by a large publishing house, so the latter should be your goal. So, what's your book going to be about? One useful way to answer this question is to ask, what do I want my business, my brand, or my industry positioning to look like 2 years from now? Your book will largely make that determination. If, for instance, you want to be seen as the world's preeminent coach of CEOs, then writing a book on needlepoint for beginners will not be helpful. You should be writing something that focuses on the new and important thing that every top-level CEO needs to know. Doing so would logically help with your positioning. If you want to be a controversial political commentator, then you may want to write something about the deceptive nature of the opposition, Ben Shapiro, bullies, how the left's culture of fear and intimidation silences America. Having done so, you will then be called upon by the media whenever such a viewpoint is required, again like Ben Shapiro, who is regularly featured on Fox News, CNN, and in a range of other forums. You would become the logical go-to source for commentary on the topic. Interestingly, even when the opposite viewpoint is under discussion, you will likely be called in as the counterbalance. My own books tend to focus on the broad theme of pinnacle performance, be it for businesses or individuals. Such content naturally dovetails with the sort of speaking and coaching that I do in a symbiotic relationship, with each promoting the other. Work backwards from your desired end state as a top player in your market. What should you be writing about in order to become what you are trying to become? And think big. If you are truly to become the unquestioned icon, what book title might make it so? That answered, here are 7 questions to increase the likelihood that the manuscript for your book will be accepted by a commercial publisher. 1. Come up with a strong premise. What's your book about? A strong premise can be enough to sell it, even if you miss the mark on every other piece of advice to follow. If I told you that the premise of a book was, everything we've been taught about childcare for the past 100 years is wrong, could you ignore it? Consider how strong the premise was for a breakaway book like The Da Vinci Code. Everything you know about religion is wrong, set to a series of high-intensity chase scenes. A weak premise is anything that sounds vague and general. It takes long to explain, it doesn't hook interest, and it doesn't seem to hone in on any one interesting thing. There's no snap, no zing. The way in which you state your premise can be interesting or boring, even for the same content. You might title a book, "A Social Exploration of the Psychological Conditions Attendant to the Rise of Totalitarianism in 1930s Europe." Boring premise. Or you might express the same idea for the same book with the rather more catchy, "Why Hitler Did It." Interesting premise. In the world of non-fiction, here are some premises that I recently found sufficiently strong that I eagerly bought the book or downloaded the audiobook. Being bored might be the most useful thing we can do for our creativity. Bored and Brilliant, How Spacing Out Can Unlock Your Most Productive and Creative Self by Manoush Zomorodi. Society focuses on the average majority, but what if you're in the brilliant minority? The Curse of the High IQ by Aaron Clary. Almost everything we've been taught about inequality is wrong, and striving to overcome inequality could lead to the most unjust society in human history. Equal is Unfair, America's Misguided Fight Against Income Inequality by Don Watkins and Yaron Brook. We lie to everyone, but we don't lie to the internet. It knows us better than anyone. What big data can tell us about ourselves? Everybody Lies, Big Data, New Data, and What the Internet Can Tell Us About Who We Really Are by Seth Stevens-Davidowitz. 2. Move the body of knowledge forward. In your proposal, be sure to explain how this book takes things a step forward. How does it increase knowledge or say something new about the topic, or consider it in a way in which it hasn't been considered before? The more it does so, and the more you can convince a publisher that it does so, the greater your chances of acceptance. If your book does not in some way move the body of knowledge forward, you may never get it published. What new problem does it solve? What has changed in the world since the last authoritative book on the topic was published? What needs updating? What needs a second look, a new consideration, a revised viewpoint? 3. Write well. If you're going to write an entire book, do a good job of it. It will reflect on your brand and become your calling card for the next few years. The best and most useful guidelines I've ever encountered are in the book The Sense of Style by Steven Pinker. The ideas are simple but powerful. Turn abstract ideas into concrete representations. Help your audience to see what you mean, rather than bogging them down in abstract notions. Relate to the reader as though you are conversing with them, which includes the use of phrases like "I will show you" and "as we've discussed." Take out zombie phrases, long, rambling, meaningless and uninspired waffle, and keep the writing lively, to the point, and easy to follow. Beware the curse of knowledge, which we will discuss in section 43. You may also want to listen to the audiobook version of Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, which has some excellent ideas on how to raise your attention-grabbing factor and make even simple ideas much more memorable. 4. Be hyper-professional about small things. Aspiring first-time authors tend to fall afoul of all the usual culprits: spelling mistakes, errors in layout, poor formatting, and so forth. You would be surprised how much of an impact this has upon the commissioning editor. It is entirely possible to disqualify yourself by virtue of poor spelling and formatting, even though your idea is essentially good. Don't give them reasons to say no to you. Don't make yourself harder to accept. 5. Follow the publisher's submission guidelines. The way in which a publisher prefers to receive your manuscript, which they will refer to as an MS, is no state secret. They publish these guidelines for aspiring authors on their websites, and it makes a big difference if you follow them closely. Generally, the process these days is to email a synopsis and sample chapter to the correct designated person, then await permission to send more. The fact that you have followed their guidelines communicates positively too. 6. Keep your explanations as short as possible. Editors are astonishingly busy people and receive great digital tsunamis of submissions which pour forth from their inboxes each day. If your email introduction is long, the chances are that it will not be read. If it's a couple of punchy, pithy paragraphs quickly detailing a strong and gripping premise, you will greatly increase your chances. 7. Be aggressive about how you will help to publicize and sell. Aspiring authors tend to believe that their scholarly credentials, or lack thereof, will determine whether they can be published. This is simply not true. You do need credibility, but you only need enough of it. Of much greater relevance is your ability to help sell books. Publishing houses are businesses after all. They want to move large numbers of units. Certainly, your credibility and the excellence of your product contribute to that equation. But are you planning to get actively involved in marketing the end results? You must, and you must tell them so. Do you already speak in public? This matters to them. Are you often in the media? Make a point of mentioning it. Do you have existing channels through which you can market and sell the end result? They want to hear about this, so tell them. Never lose sight of the fact that a submission to a publisher is a sales pitch. And the greater part of the persuasive argument is, I can sell lots of books.